Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks Podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do try to stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. Right now, the live stream is kind of going through a transition as my work goes through transition, so does the recording time. But don't worry, it also gets uploaded as a YouTube video under the channel of Zenitsu, and it's still also being uploaded on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. So please feel free to leave that rating, like, follow, subscribe, review, whatever, depending on the platform that you're listening on. It really does help support the podcast. Today I am back with my co-host Jay Stewart, and we're going to be talking kind of about EX08, because, that's the latest set that just came out, and we said we would talk about that last week, considering we didn't, and we spent a lot of time talking about nationals and kind of just the debate about how do we define diversity. So that was a pretty fun and interesting conversation, and I think EX8 definitely gives us a lot of additional talking points in terms of where the current state of the game is, or like what we're expecting out of EX8 and forward, because Bandai also just so happened to drop a big news bomb on us. The majority of it really doesn't seem like it's anything, but it's still something to go over because, they said it is. But this will lead us to the question of the week, which is, what are your thoughts about EX8? So anyone in the chat or any listeners, you can feel free to type down in the comments below your answer to that question. So, Jay Stewart, just to bring it back, what are your actual thoughts about EX8? Because after doing a box opening, I have some very, very spicy thoughts.
Yeah, so unfortunately with me, I wasn't able to open a box yet at all because my locals doesn't have them yet, from what I was told. So I was able to hit up somebody and I was able to get a playset of my commons through rares, but now I'm just kind of sitting and waiting on the SRs. And I mean, there's some SRs that I did kind of pull the trigger on ahead of time to just go ahead and buy, like the pyramid ones, but there's a lot of other SRs that I'm just like looking at on TCG Player, and I'm like going, what the heck? Like the Bogramon X Antibody is like 25 cents. Uh, like besides just Pyramid Mod, the next highest one is like Dinomon and Metals Siegramon, and those are like going to $6 to $5 price ranges. Other than that, everything, all other SRs are like $2 and less.
Yeah, I kind of said in my video that, like, just to kind of summarize that in case you didn't watch my box opening, my box openings sucked. Like, I probably hit some of the lowest value boxes I could have possibly hit inside of the set, and I know that's kind of the outlier, but that's, not necessarily going to happen for everyone, but there's also going to be those same people who hit the same level of lows that I hit. And it just, from an opening standpoint, it just felt absolutely abysmal to open, knowing, like, looking at the secondary market, sure is indicative of, like, oh yes, there's just almost no value in the set. Which does suck. And this happens as a byproduct because I followed the market long enough to know when the secrets are hot, the supers are not. So usually you want to have good value in your supers in order to actually make the box worth opening, because now we're going to hit, what was it? EX4 situations again, where the only thing worth anything in the entire booster box is the secret. Luckily enough for us, we actually have two good secrets, but the box just sucks. So if anyone's not familiar, the box is seeded, so that's not good. To me, that's the sign of a rush product. And the decks inside that you make and edit are not good. They are just not good. They're like tier 2 at best, and tier 2 is kind of stretching it. I think, like, honestly, the best of it is Pyramidimon, And like it's pure Midimon and Dinomon, and they're tier 3 at best. Because at locals, somebody was playing Dinomon, and they lost pretty hardcore to Bloomlord, Bloomlord. And I'm just like, Bloomlord already is like a tier 2, tier 3 deck. So if the best deck from this set is already struggling against older decks, like the power level wise, the set's not good. And granted, that's the usual trend with EX sets. I will have to preface that. That is the usual set trend. But even the self-contained decks, like Nature Spirits, well, Nature Spirits is an upgrade. But when it comes to like Deep Savers and Nightmare Soldiers, those decks aren't good at all. Like Nature Spirits already wasn't very good when it came out, and it's a little bit better with more support, but it's not that much better. So it's just, I don't want to say it's sad. It's just expected at this point, to where the majority of the sets, like EX sets, aren't going to hold meta relevancy.
Yeah, because I mean, like, beside, like, I understand, like, you kind of mentioned that I think you mentioned to me last week that uh, what is this guy's name? Not Galamon X, but it's,
Medieval.
the other secret. Yeah, Medieval. I know you told me, like, get your playsets while you can, but I'm not gonna lie, just, like, even looking at the Medieval Galamon, like, right now on TCG Player is $40, but I'm just looking at it and I'm like, it doesn't seem that well worth it for me as of right now. Like, I don't have a want or need for that secret rare. And it's usually weird for me because I always like to try to get a playset of everything, so. Like,
Yeah.
even the Suzanumon Ace from this last EX set, I'm still trying to hunt down my fourth one at my locals if I could. Otherwise, I have to get it on TCG Player. But, it's just like, even that one I was trying to get a playset of day one, but this medieval Galamon's just, something about it's just not screaming, don't worry about this. I mean, Galamon X, anybody, the only thing that seems really good about it to me that stands out, besides being a tricolor, is the whole all turns if you have 0 memory or less, Digimon isn't affected by opponent's Digimon effects. I mean, pretty good, solid protection.
Yes, it's limited protection also, so it's not as like absurd as Magnamon X is, but it's not a bad card. Like if anything, the entire Gmon X line that's coming out of EX08 probably is the strongest thing in the entire set, and it's so strong that it actually makes Gallantmon playable. Like I think like obviously when we get 2.5, which contains the rest of BT19, that's when Gallantmon's going to come full force, especially since it's going to get another wave of support in BT21. So Gallantmon is looking very hot right now. But yeah, Medieval Gallantmon is in a very interesting position. I'd probably call it like the Death X zone, where it's fulfilling a very similar role to Death X. It's a little bit easier to use than Death X, I will say that. But it's going to be, on average, more expensive than Death X in terms of play cost, not in terms of monetary value. It should hold around the same, maybe a little bit higher monetary value as Death X, but we also just got Death X reprint, so that really helped tank the value of Death X. But the idea on Medieval Gallantmon is he's a control card. You put him in these like weird goofball decks where it's just like, I'm okay with just hard slamming a mega that's gonna end up costing me 7 memory, and then he just outs the field. Like, that's kind of just what he does, and he's kind of like a little pseudo floodgate where the opponent just can't play Digimon. Otherwise, they'll trigger Medieval Gallantmon's ability, and he'll just instantly pop it. So that's kind of funny. But that's kind of, again, like what Death X is doing. You just hard slam Death X, he de-digivolves the entire field, which de-digivolve is still relevant. And then during the opponent's turn, that's when he's going to be popping it. So Medieval Gallantmon has like his own little pros and cons because he also has Vortex and Alliance. So and he's 2 colors. So it's not a bad card. It's just not something every deck needs to jump on right away. is the big thing. It's 4 very specific decks, or like play styles for decks.
Yeah, like I know there's like the Mother Shoto control. I could see that one maybe using it potentially.
Yeah. Um like those Megazoo-esque style decks or clock style decks. Um so like those would probably take advantage of that card the best. Obviously, the intended purpose for that card is to go into Shoto's deck, but I mean it does strictly replace the Zeffica from EX7, because he's literally doing almost the funny thing is he's literally doing almost the same thing as Zeffica from EX7, just better in every way, shape, and form. And because he is a Vortex Warrior, he fits into the deck just as well as Zeffica. So, like, if anyone's looking for Shoto upgrades, you just throw in the promo, um, the promo level 4, and then you throw in Medieval Gallantmon, and the deck is upgraded, and it's not much better still. That's the only unfortunate thing. It's just not much better. It's a little bit. It's working on it. It's not quite there yet. But I know we got some other spoilers for his deck, so there's obviously going to be more support coming, considering he is the protagonist of Liberators. But based on the trend, it seems like they just want to hit all of the characters before going back to, the pro tag. So
Hmm.
we'll probably get some like generic Liberator spoilers, or not spoilers, just generic Liberator support sprinkled in probably throughout 2025. So Liberators aren't like bad to invest in. Their decks are actually pretty strong. It's just unfortunately the power gap for where the meta currently is to what they're currently making is very, very wide. Um, when it comes to the new stuff, anytime they're like updating some of the old stuff like Gallantmon, it's obviously going to be like hyper pushed. Um, so that's the big selling point of this set to me, is the fact that it's just Gallantmon. Like, that's it. That's the only thing worth anything in this entire set is Gallantmon. And I think that's pretty sad. But I also think Bandai probably knew this, considering like where the product release schedule is, because literally in like a month we have 2.5. So they shot out LM, like the little LM booster boxes in December. Then January, which is this month, there's EX8, and then next month, that's the set that I probably would go harder into, is 2.5. That's going to be way more meta relevant, because not only does it have some of the other BT19 cards that we were missing, which makes certain decks more meta relevant, like Gallantmon, but it also has BT20, all of it, and BT20 looks like a very hyper pushed set, like incredibly pushed. More so compared to some of the other sets.
Yeah, because I will say, like I know one archetype that I thought was like really low for the price that it was. Uh, that being trying to blank on what it is the Justimon archetype. Because like right now the X body super rare is like barely pushing $2, and I'm trying to see and make sure because BT19 we did well in BT19 in Japan they had some more cards.
Yeah, the other half that we're missing is Tamer's focused, which is season 3 of the anime. So we know we're going to be getting more Gallant support, obviously, more Justimon support, which Justimon is trying to transition to play with the uh, the chess piece options. So the
Yeah,
bishop, the rook, the knight, the queen, and then we're obviously getting more Renamon support, more Terriermon support. So, like, just the good stuff of Tamers, except most of it isn't good, which is the ironic part. because again, Gallantmon's the only like really meta relevant thing according to Japanese data that came out in BT19 also in terms of the second half that we're missing. So yeah. Sorry, Renamon lovers, your deck still is not great, and it's literally just going to turn into Tau Loop for Shine Greymon Ruin mode to make that card extra broken. Which, I mean, I guess that's something. It's at least something from it is playable. So, good on that, I guess.
Yeah, because I know, like I was just trying to say, like, the Justimon SR and EX8. I was kind of surprised that it wasn't a little bit higher, because the Justimon Blistar from the BT19 half has that when digivolving when attacking, you could trash an option card in the battle area. I mean, kind of looking at some of our meta decks right now, there is quite a bit of decks that heavily rely on option cards being in the battle area, whether that be the trainings, memory card, memory boost, the scramble cards, even the whole Leviathan Biting Crush too.
Yeah, I think Justimon is going to be in a very interesting spot. It just depends on how good he actually is at his overall game plan, because obviously the intended purpose is the devices, the chess devices. That's the options he wants to pop because they don't have a way to actually trigger themselves. So they need Justimon to pop them in order to make themselves useful, which is the awkward thing because it's probably more beneficial to pop the opponent's options because that will slow them down, acting kind of like a little floodgate, but not a big one. I do like the fact that they're trying to play around with delayed option removal because that's a huge problem we have currently in the game is they're basically outside of just running the correct floodgate, zero ways to interact with those options. And if the opponent has a way to out the floodgate, then they can still use the option. Whereas Justimon just actually completely gets rid of it. And like the one interesting thing about EX8 I'll have to like say is the fact that we technically timeline wise have EX8 before BT19 in terms of like the impact of BT19 coming in the second half. So we're going to have like 2 ultimate cups of EX8 meta, and because that's like our early to mid to late, it's sometime in February, like that we get 2 ultimate cups. And this will be the only time we see if EX8 actually has any real tangible impact or if it's just a dead in the water set, which according to the market, it's a dead in the water set literally outside of Gallantmon. But yeah, so that's kind of EX8. I'm not super high on it. It doesn't sound like you're super high on it either. Just to kind of give like our final thoughts.
Yeah, just because I know the box toppers, even like that they include, it's just like don't even like. I mean, obviously there's like the new promo like Tyrannomon X and everything, but it doesn't seem worth buying a box just for those. It's not like the BT14 where you needed to buy 2 boxes minimum to at least get a playset of the scramble cards or anything like that. I think it was 2 boxes, maybe it was 4, but
It was 4. Just
yeah,
because it
4.
comes with
That's
one
right.
set of all of the scrambles. And the box toppers like in this set are fine. The reprint alt arts they're whatever. None of them are really holding much value. I think like $5 is the most expensive one, and that's Renamon because waifu tax. Outside of that, like they're all not really any special. Is kind of like where I'm leaning with that. And then the box toppers for the updated, like the upgrade box toppers, they're okay, but again, if you don't care about any of the decks that they're trying to upgrade, then those cards aren't really worthwhile, especially since those this time they actually did do it correct and give us 2 cards per pack instead of 1, and there's only 4 of them instead of 6. So It's a little bit better and a little bit easier to get what you want, which is good. Accessibility is always good. I'll never knock on accessibility. That's probably the best thing about EX sets is they have some of the best accessibility. It's just meta impacts, they usually are pretty bad.
Yeah, I think the last EX set that was really impactful is EX5.
EX6. EX6 had Demon Lords, and like EX6 was in the era where they were trying to power creep things to high heavens and back. And boy, did they power creep a lot of stuff in that time period. Like EX7 wasn't bad. It just wasn't insane. It was like one step backward compared to EX6, but it's one step forward compared to EX7. So I would say like, or EX8. So I would say like EX7 is more powerful than EX8.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that.
Because EX7 started Nature Spirits, it had all the Liberator stuff, which had a starter deck. It felt like it had more overall support. And, like, there's a lot of things that are in EX8 that feel like are supposed to just enhance EX7. So it kind of creates this, like, weird dynamic on, like, what was this product actually trying to achieve? Because literally outside of the Liberator decks, it felt, and Gallantmon, it felt very bland and forgettable. Like, I had another person at Locals trying to build Renamon, and they're just like, Renamon's just so hard to build because of the sheer amount of plugins, and the fact that you have to run these plugins, and you lose out on, like, a lot of other generic options and deck space for other things. Like, it bogs down the deck. And without the BT19 stuff, it really just doesn't feel like it's complete yet either. But it had like a lot of support. Like it's weird. Like Renamon's not in a great spot as a actual standalone deck, which is why everyone just plays Tau Loop in Japan when it comes to that. It's just easier. It's better. It's more high rolly, but that's kind of Renamon in a nutshell. Because like Renamon's just not doing enough on her own, even with all of the crazy plugins and whatnot.
Yeah, because like even the Tyrannomon, like it feels like it's wanting to give like the Tyrannomon archetype like a power boost, but the problem is like they kind of been fumbling the ball with the Tyrannomon earlier on, because at first he was like shown up in like I think what was it 1.0 for us. It was like he was showing up as in the red archetype. Then BT11 he was all green, and now it's kind of a mix of both red and green, but we don't have a good baseline for him. Like we have a red Koromon now and a red and green Agumon, but we don't have any other Agumons that really work with this archetype. So it's like there's no bottom end for this whatsoever now.
Yeah, and I think like that's just a usual Bandai design problem. Whenever they do retreads, the old support basically just goes by the wayside because whatever they're printing newer is obviously updated and better. And because Tyrannomon never really had like a good like foothold in anything before, it does create these situations where the deck is deficient because it's that what they gave us isn't enough to really finish the deck, so we have to make it up ourselves. And what we have tools wise is not necessarily very A, efficient, or B, good enough. Like the fact that I have to say in my deck profile for it that the best supporting level 6 for the deck is Medieval Gallantmon, because he's a really good red, like generic red and green Digimon, is not necessarily what I want to say. I want to say like, oh yeah, use Dino Rexmon, but the BT14 Dino Rexmon is mono red. And what's your best level 5? Green and black. So you can't digivolve on it, and it doesn't have like a trait-based evolution to make that easier. Like it is just a kind kind of a mess. Like, it's just they started something. It's really decent what they started, but we don't have the tools to finish it. And that's the same thing with like a lot of these Liberator decks, where it's just like they start something and it's not finished. They gives us like 2/3 of the way there, and then the last 1/3 is what's actually holding the deck back because we have to use not efficient or good tools.
Yeah, kind of like with the bees deck that they introduced. Like, I know they gave it more support in 2.0 for us, but it's still missing like another fan Gmon or something. It's missing something else, like an additional Tamer maybe.
So like bees, I actually think is more competently put together than some of the other Liberator decks that we had. Like
Yeah.
bees actually feels very good and strong in comparison to like Tyrannomon, because like at least with bees you have Protoform, and Protoform working with the security and bees being able to like re-grab it and shove new cards in. Like it's actually not that bad. It really isn't. I think like what holds bees back mostly is just where the
The
meta
meta.
currently is. Yeah, that's honestly it. Like my at locals, we do have a person who is playing bees also, and it wasn't bad. It honestly wasn't bad. I have the majority of it pretty much built. The only thing that was holding me back was the fact that I needed protoforms, and I'm just like, I really don't want to put protoforms in this like tier 3 deck. But there's enough tools because of like insects getting a butt ton of support and everything being like cyborg and insect. Like between its colors, its traits, and the what recently has came out to support both of them really is what's helping bees be better than some of these other newer Liberator decks, at least in my perspective. But that's like I said, they give us 2/3 of the deck, and then we have to figure out the last 1/3. And if the last 1/3 is good enough, then the deck is fine. If it's not, then the deck struggles. So, but that's kind of just EX8 in a nutshell in a lot of EX decks. Like I'm trying to get Nightmare Soldiers and Deep Savers to work, and they're just bad. Like they what I'd like to work with when it comes to decks and how I build it is understanding how the deck wants to function and like what the core gameplay line, not like gameplay loop, but like what is the ideal line to get me to the end result that puts me in the best position. Nightmare Soldiers doesn't have one, so that's making things extra hard. And Deep Savers is just not good. So, yeah, those decks are kind of hot and bothered, but they are getting some more support. So there's that.
Yeah, because I mean, with me with the Deep Savers, it's like it kind of seems whatever, but it's just like Deep Savers seems it'd be a lot better if it wasn't Deep Savers. Like what I mean by example, and this might be kind of leaning into the future topic, um, is like take 2.5 for example. There's going to be a Digimon X Antibody. This is like a newer reveal. If you combo this with the EX08 with X Antibody from BT9, sounds pretty darn good of an effect. Because you got the Digimon from EX8 that when attacking you gain a memory and inheritable jamming. So you just equip it with X Antibody, you swing, gain a memory, X Antibody, now you evo for free into the Digimon X that has now jamming.
Yeah, like they have strong things going for them. Uh, it's just yeah, but the only problem with Seedramon X Antibody is it's not a deep saver. So like that's part of the problem is it needs things like, and that's why Nature Spirits is really hot and bothered too, is because it needs everything to be one color or it needs everything to have the trait. And at least Deep Savers has the color thing going for it compared to Nightmare Soldiers, where it's just like it's working off of two colors primarily, but it needs everything to be Nightmare Soldiers, otherwise things just aren't going to flow. And I think like that's the big thing that's holding Nature Spirits back is it's torn between 2 or 3 different colors, and all of the Nature Spirits cards are not that great. So it doesn't have the room to work with any excess cards. So it limits what we actually are able to do as a result. So it's like take Eldradimon for Nature Spirits, just as a quick example. It is a black card, but the best cards in Nature Spirits are blue and green. So you're using blue and green searching tools, and now you have this card you can't search for, but it is arguably the most important card in the entire deck because that's where a lot of its play lines are based off of. So like that's where a lot of these family type decks are falling into this trap of we don't have a solid color identity and everything needs to be specifically trait based. So it's just the problem with multicolor deck design, to be honest. But that's kind of just yeah. Any other thoughts on EX8 because we kind of already covered basically like everything. I know we didn't really talk about Scottymon at all, but like again, it's just going to be really interesting to see how players adapt that card if it's going to be in yellow vaccines, if it's going to be in ice and snow, if ice and snow is even good enough, like I don't know. I just don't think it's like anything special. Like it's good, it's just not special, and I think like that's the problem.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything really that stands out in EX8 that's making it the whole uh invest in it. I mean, as of right now, because like I said, two like the 2.5 cards that we're gonna be getting, there's some upgrade cards for EX8, which is usually weird because usually EX sets are the upgrade cards for the base sets and everything, but the order of how this released for us is it's kind of a little wonky, but I mean, it really doesn't seem as impactful as it wanted to try to be, kind of like how EX7 was, as you said. Like, EX7 definitely felt a little bit more impactful. Because even EX8, there's like more future support for the Ice Clad in it, but I mean, with the whole, oh Jesus, why am I drawing a blank? Hexablaumon, as of right now, the problem with that is like the play, like access to playing the card because like on TCG players like $20+, so it's like might turn away people from not even playing Ice Clads at all.
Right, and
I
I
mean,
think like
I'm
that's
just hope.
partially why Scottymon is tanking is because if you don't have like for a blue ice clad or ice and snow deck, the more important part is unironically the EX7 cards, not the new stuff. Because you still need to have a good supporting mega that is ice and snow, and the majority of cards because they're getting rebranded and retraded are not ice and snow. So yeah, it puts things in a very awkward position. Um, that makes it not necessarily as desirable as what Bandai thinks it is. I almost feel like they're trying to like oversell and underdeliver with EX8. I think like that's my end takeaway is oversell and underdeliver.
Yeah, and even especially if you consider looking at the going into the spoilers, if we even look at that stuff looks more exciting to open than this one right now.
Yeah, because like when I say that the most exciting and impactful thing in EX8 is a bad OTK deck, that's not necessarily a good selling point. So but yeah, we did get before we get into spoilers. I think like we're kind of just done talking about EX8 because there's really not much a lot to talk about. Over, I think like the oversell and underdeliver is probably the best summary I could give it. Okay, so if I were to try to make EX8 better from a player standpoint, honestly, with the lack of starter decks, and we could get into this even more because we do have Bandai's product release schedule, I think Digimon has a severe lack of starter deck problem. And like now is the time they probably should have just been printing starter decks for each of the Liberator characters. Like as they come out. Like I think having a starter deck to accompany each Liberator character would be a really good selling point for each set. And I think that's what helped make EX7 at least feel more special than EX8.
Yeah,
Because,
because I mean, even like something like I might be kind of going into the my old TCG. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, but even like a really good idea to just kind of add on. Like, imagine if they introduced the Ice Class starter deck and the Master Tyrannomon deck, because those are two of the Tamers that are featured on the EX8 pack. Like, imagine if they had starter decks and they included some reprints of cards to help their decks. Like, imagine if Iceclad had the reprint of Hexablaumon, for example. I mean, I think that alone would make it worth selling and encourage people to play the Iceclad deck.
Yeah, or even just like a weakened version, but just something to sell us more on these products is kind of just the end takeaway. Like, I think it would have just done significantly good, and I guess that's like where they think the promos are, where it's just like, ooh, look at this promo of Landramon, it's gonna dramatically help the Pyramidi deck, and it does, but the problem is it's just a single card. I mean, granted, you have the close that goes with it in that same uh, store tournament pack, but still, like, those are just two cards. If they sold me some old, like, if they reprinted the BT4 Gogmamon and sold me on some, like, a starter deck for close, I think that would make people more enticed to want to buy into that deck. And then we, as players, for newer players, tell, like, hey, you buy this this starter deck with this product, you're good. And I think, like, that's the big failing point with Digimon, is they're not capitalizing on that. They do, just not very often. Just as a point of critique on how I feel like Digimon could be better if they put more time and effort into it. Because, like, instead of selling us the promos, those could have been starter deck cards. And then, like you said, they don't have to design a whole bunch of new cards. They could just reprint certain cards that fit within that archetype. And then, boom, you have a very simple and easy product that also has something meaningful in it with the reprints. And then you could also, if they really wanted to, just reprint the staple options that they really feel like they want to shove down our throats and force deck design to be built around. They could throw those in everything for all I care, and they should, because those cards shouldn't be expensive, because they're literally being used in almost everything. But yeah. So that's EX8 in a nutshell. So I guess before we get into spoilers, we kind of like hinted at Bandai doing a big news bomb and dropping a lot of announcements. So we could kind of cover that relatively quickly. I feel like the announcement itself really was just a big nothing burger, because there was just a lot of stuff we already knew. So, like, going and looking at the product release schedule, it's like, okay, in April, we have Starter Decks 20 and 21. That's going to be released alongside of BT 21. And the starter decks, and those two starter decks are going to play with BT 21. It's like, cool. That's what they should do more often instead of literally once a year, because looking at the product release line, those are the only starter decks we're getting for the rest of the entire year as of this point. Because in June, we have EX9. What's EX9 about?
EX9 is supposed to be the continuation of like Digimon World, if I'm understanding it correctly.
It's not really
It really
Digimon
does.
World. It's like the
It's like
Digivice.
versus Monsters is what it's called.
Yeah, and I think it's like just based on some older Digivice, which is fine. It's probably more family support if I had to take a guess. Like, we're probably getting Metal Empire.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be down for it. I mean, I'm probably gonna be getting this EX set just because, funny enough, this EX set actually comes out on my birthday, so nice little birthday surprise for me.
Yeah, and then, so that's in June. July, we're getting BT22, which we do actually know the theme of. What's BT22's theme?
Cyber Sleuth, finally!
Yeah, they're finally dipping into video game territory. That's always nice.
Well, it's not even that. It's just the fact that Cyber Sleuth, when it came out in JP, like, a lot of players really got back into Digimon because of that. And even people here in America, they were trying to import it. They were trying to play the game. And when it finally came out here, it was like a big successful Digimon game in a long time for us. And they even created a sequel of called Hacker's Memories. And even now, we're all still kind of wondering, it's like, oh, when's the next Cyber Sleuth game? Because we want more Cyber Sleuth. So, like, it's just kind of strange they haven't been capitalizing on the video game that brought a lot of people back into Digimon.
I mean, Bandai's... This kind of goes back to, like, the video that I watched in reference to, I think, like, last week, where Bandai just doesn't know how to sell. Where it's just, like, all they have to do is just make more Digimon games, and they're just not. And the Digimon community is just starved for really good content, which when they generally make Digimon games, it's pretty decent, at least like this newer wave. I think like the PS2 era wasn't necessarily super kind to Digimon, but I digress. All we need is just new games, and they kind of just refuse to make them. It's weird. And when they do, they change the formula every single time. So I think like what made Cyber Sleuth extra successful was it felt more like a return to form, because it was more based on how Dusk and Dawn played out, because it was in the Stories franchise, or like the Stories like subsection of game. So, but yeah, Cyber Sleuth was is probably still the best two Digimon games in recent history. So BT22 is going to be pretty hype. Then in September we have EX10. Did we get the theme for EX10? I think we did.
Yeah, it's called Sinister Order. So what people are believing that it's supposed to be, because what it
villains.
shows is it's like supposed to be the anime villain. So we might see Devimon, we might see Myotismon, we could see the return of Dark Masters potentially, Black War Grey. I'm trying to think what else. We might could theoretically get even Mother supporting it for like. It just kind of varies, because there's a lot of different anime villains, if it is even anime villains. But we do know for a fact Black War Greymon should be in there, because the background photo shows Black War Greymon. It doesn't show anything on the pack or nothing, but yeah.
Yeah, so those are the themes that we do know of. And then October comes BT23, which we don't know the theme of. And then November and December is literally nothing. And then going into January of next year, we have BT24, followed by in February EX11. So it literally is like their schedule is 2 months on, 1 to 2 months off. So that's kind of the flow that they want to get us in, where it's just like, here's an EX set and a BT set, borderline back to back, and then a month or two of nothing. I don't know if that's correct. If they like, I mean, the pattern is it's 3 months from every BT set is another BT set, and like almost 3 months from an EX set is another EX set. It's weird. Bandai's really weird. But yeah, that's your timeline of release products. And in April is the only starter deck as of right now. And I think that's a shame. That is actually a shame. We've been saying that we need more starter decks for a while. And this kind of highlights and shows that they don't have any new starter decks planned in their timeline of events, because that would be something to announce. It's like, hey, here's the next advanced deck. At the very least, here's when the next advanced deck is going to come out. We don't even know that.
Just tell us it's going to be Galamon or Sakuyamon already at this point.
Yeah, then to kind of blast through the rest of the news, BT20 or like Special Booster 2.5 is going to have lottery cards. Shocker. They have an extra lottery card, which is going to be like the Serial Greymon or Metal Greymon and Metal Gurumon. That's fine. Then what other spoilers do we have? World Convergence is going to be a hero-based set, so it's also going to have supposedly Zenith with Galactimon and Owen Dreadnought with his new Digimon, so that'll be cool as a good sub-theme for BT21. Then in World Convergence, we're also going to be getting some signature cards, which is nice. Like, these are signed cards. And then going more into World Convergence, we are finally going to be getting Applimon. So that's something I'm personally excited for. And we know what the Link ability is, where Link is, it'll say a specific trait and then a cost, And then kind of just like Ragnarlordmon, you pay that cost, and then you could shove the Digimon underneath the primary Digimon on the field. So they show like Gachimon as an example. He has a link cost of 1. So you can link for 1, put it under another Applimon, and then you give whatever Applimon he's now under the raid ability and plus 2000 DP. And the uniqueness here versus Ragnarlordmon is the cards go sideways, and because of how Link works, it kind of works with like Digicross, where it could be from the hand or field. So it gives you more flexibility and variety, especially since it's going to be trait based, and Applimon are all Applimon. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think the unique thing about that, though, is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does have a separate effect going parallel, like, not like the normal left to right, but like up and down kind of style of effect where it says plus 2000 DP. So what I'm trying to understand is, if you use the link effect, do you get that plus 2000, or is that...
No, yeah,
it's kind of
you
weird.
get the plus 2000 because it's being loaded sideways. So like if you have your normal card facing vertical, the link card goes underneath horizontal, so that way it'll show the plus 2000 DP, and then it feels like they want you to kind of like put it like an inheritable. So it'll be shoved sideways, and then you should also be able to read the fact that it has raid. So you get both of those, the DP boost and the raid, but this allows them, because of how it does it, to change the DP boost that they want. So it's just like, okay, this might be a weaker Digimon normally, but linked, it would give you a way better boost than if you were to use the Digimon on base. Right now, the Gachimon has 2000 DP and gives 2000 DP, so that's kind of whatever. But yeah, I'm curious to see how this mechanic's actually going to work and be implemented with the other Applimons, because there's a good chunk of Applimon, and it'll be nice to see what all of them kind of do. But yeah, so that's more world convergence stuff. You already mentioned the theme of all of these sets, because those were announced. BT, we already know a lot about BT21, or not BT21, Starter Decks 20 and 21. Spoiler, they're adventure themed, and they're playing with the adventure trait, so that's like the trend that they've been doing is, hey, this is from Seekers, so we're giving it the Seeker trait. This is from Chronicles, so we're giving it the Chronicle trait. So we have Adventure Cast featuring the adventure trait. So that'll open up interesting possibilities there. The scrambles are going to get reprinted in those starter decks, which is good. They have some unique and interesting tamers, which is fine. And then if you bring a friend, they're doing like this bring a friend promotion where you get like an extra pack. So they really are trying to use these two starter decks to push onto newer players more specifically. But again, if they just printed more starter decks, that would help get people into it. I get why they don't, but I don't agree with it. Then we got LM stuff. So LM5 is going to be a couple of new cards and like 4 reprints. That's going to be a promo pack for us in BT21. And I don't know how everyone else is getting it, but that's whatever. And then they have LM6, which is kind of like another mini set called Billion Bullets. So we don't really have much information on that, but it'll probably just have more reprints and a couple of new cards. So they're continuing with the LM stuff. Anything else? Oh yeah, and then competitions. So how our competitive season is going to be laid out. So they're basically just taking what Japan has done and copying it for us. So we have 2 competitive waves. We have Season 1 and Season 2. And then we have a Finals 1, Finals 2, and Worlds. So if you compete in Season 1 and you don't play in like Nationals 1, you could use that Season 1 invite for Nationals 2. I'm just guessing because that's what One Piece currently does. So they're just kind of unifying how their competitive seasons ran between different regions and different games. So not anything really interesting there. And then, yeah, that's pretty much all the news. So I guess we could wrap this up with some spoilers because, boy, howdy, do we have a lot of spoilers. And some of them are going to be more interesting than others, but we're going to try to blast through this as best as we can because there is quite a lot. So we last left off at what we say the dragon
Unleash
gene.
the Dragon Gene.
Yeah. We get an option card that has a delay effect for Examon, so Examon gets his own option. That's kind of nice. Uh, it's one of those like trap options where it's just like, yeah, you really don't want to mess with this card, otherwise I get the delay effect. So it's just another one of those. It's 2 costs, so it's gonna be good. Um, then we got Pulsemon, which is supporting the Seekers deck because that's just what I'm going to be labeling it as. But it's obviously pretty good for Pulsemon as well. Lucamon is supporting the Seekers and the Lucamon deck as well. The Lucamon actually is pretty good. I probably am going to be replacing this Lucamon with the BT 16. Yeah, the BT 16 Lucamon or BT 15, somewhere around there. Because this one's actually a searcher. So Lucamon finally gets a searcher. That's kind of nice. Then we got the XL egg, which is just cost reduction or Digivolution reduction. We got Loader Leomon and Chromon, which are just giant nothing burgers. They're just more XL cards.
I mean, the Loader Leomon does have a really good effect of one of your opponent's Digimon can't activate when Digivolving effects. I mean, pretty decent in itself right there.
Yeah, the Leomon stuff out of the Excel stuff is obviously way better than the Bird stuff because in comparison, if you want to take a look at Chromon, it's just literally a plus 3,000 DP, and then one of your Digimon can attack. It's like, ooh, riveting. So, the Leomon stuff is going to be like the hot stuff, not only just for Excel, but for Leomon because it has the Leomon trait. But the only problem is they don't have name-based evolution, so they're gonna have to pay a little bit more in order to actually utilize these cards, which is the sucky thing. But because they're Leomon, they're still pretty good. And Leomon already has a decent amount of Digivolution reduction, so it might not be that big of a deal. It'll hurt, just not as much. Then we got the new Fen, which is okay. It's obviously meant to be played with the Seekers deck because it's bringing out a level 4 SOC or Seekers traded Digimon. So that's how the Fen is bringing out the Kazuchi. And unfortunately, the inheritable ability is not the change the end of turn condition. So that's why I think like for Fen decks, this card's like completely going to be ignored. I think maybe in like the old Fenry Lucamon, this is actually a good secondary level 6 Digimon for the deck. If you're playing like the old BT14 Fenry Lucamon that's not trying to do the Takemi Kazuchi shenanigans. And then, but the Kazuchimon, that's the highlight of the two for me because Kazuchimon goes into literally everything. It goes into his own deck. It goes into the Takemi Kazuchi, like it goes into Pulsemon. It goes into Seekers, and it goes into Takemi Kazuchi, the iteration we currently have. And it's just strictly a better card. Fortitude is nice. You're not really going to be using it. The fact that I can Digivolve off of purple is very relevant. And then the inheritable abilities like the big appeal because Takemi Kazuchi, the OTK variant that we have, you swing, you trash a security, and then this Kazuchimon will put the security back in. And if you don't kill the opponent and they hit your security, then you get to replace the security that you lost. It's just raw recovery, which is really something that the deck needed and wanted, is not to go minus on its own security, just in case it can't finish games. So yeah, the Kazuchimon is really good. Then we got hold on, I lost my place.
It's the Bancha Leomon and the
Oh yeah, yeah.
whatever that.
Um, uh, Varadurumon. Yeah, Bacho and
Yeah, that's
Varaduru.
better. That's better than
Um,
me.
Bacho I like. The D-Digivolve is relevant, as I already said. Like D-Digivolve right now, it's unfortunate that D-Digivolve is like the best form of soft removal in the game. Just because of how high the protections are, make most hard removals irrelevant. Or like you have to pretend that they're irrelevant. They're not all the time irrelevant, just some of the time. But the D-Digivolve is nice, and then the end of turn to Digivolve into Chaos is good. The Viroduru's just whatever. It still has that same end of turn, but it's just more DP boosting. It's literally nothing burger. Um, then do you want to talk about your Chronicles Tamer?
Yeah, so Kodo and Yuji are dual tamers, both red and black. They're memory setters. It's 5 costs, so keep that in mind. But it's your turn when your Chronicles trade Digimon attacks. By suspending this tamer, one of your Digimon on the field can Digivolve into level 6 or lower, with the Digivolution cost reduced by 1. I mean, it's pretty decent. I mean, not gonna lie, it doesn't really crazily stands out. Like, if I was to compare this to the Koto from BT7, if I remember correctly, it's a Davis searcher that could potentially, theoretically, grab 2 cards, and then the Yuji from BT8, it's like tucking cards underneath, gaining a memory, and drawing a card, which is the Ty and Matt from BT6. I mean, honestly, those two kind of seem a little bit better than this. Not gonna lie, in my personal opinion.
I think the only relevant part is the fact that it's Chronicles trait and it's 2 colors, so it's like slightly
Yeah.
easily searchable depending on how you're going to be searching. So, like, I don't know. I'm kind of mid on the card too, but we'll see what people are using it with in cooking because it is level 6 or lower, so it's just generic evolution reduction. It's not bad. It's just not exciting. Then you got
Yeah.
your option. So like this is I'm just gonna call them the trap options. So you got your or not really trap options. They're just more like support delays. There we go. You got your Chronicles support delay. Fellowship of Hope's Keepers.
Yeah, this one you would definitely use the Tamer for because of the fact that you can reveal 3 cards and add any Chronicle trait card among them. So it gives you a reason to use that Tamer specifically. But even like its effect is all turns when any of your Chronicle trait Digimon are deleted, delay by moving your level 3 or higher Chronicle trait Digimon from the breeding area to the battle area. You could Digivolve it into a Chronicles trait Digimon from the hand or trash without paying the play cost. I mean, using your trash, uh, kind of like how purple does. I mean, it's not bad, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that it searches is already makes it very highly playable. Uh, so that the fact that it has a delay to basically just replace the Digimon you kind of just lost with one that was in your raising or breeding area is nice because then the idea of that is when it comes to your turn, if it's the opponent's turn, you get to hatch the egg and then there use your Digimon in raising area that you then can use because that seems to be like the gimmick is force moving out your secondary Digimon to form that second stack. That seems like that's the direction of the deck, and this just helps support that while being Chronicles and X antibody traded. So those are also relevant for searching. Then we got an Itmon for the Dark Dragons. It's just a searcher, nothing too fancy there. Punkmon is blocker in retail. When you it gives blocker in retail. It also helps discard. So that was like one of the big struggles with the deck is it didn't have good ways of reducing your hand. So Pugmon helps reduce your hand with discard. The new Loudmon is rated. It gives raid and piercing and plus 4,000 DP, while also trashing 2 cards in your hand. So not terrible. And then we got Devimon. So we already knew Virus Imperial was getting support. This is their new egg that they could use. It's just DP boosting. It's a good generic red egg for DP boosting because it's any Digimon that has 4 or more Digivolution sources. So not terrible, just generically.
Yeah, with that, with the Demi Vmon egg, I think the Montimon, it got reprinted in the LM4 for us and everything. It's a promo purple egg and everything. I think that one's definitely going to be the more usable one than this one for sure.
Yes, I would agree with that. When it comes to the eggs, that egg feels like it's more tailored to what Imperial's trying to do. This is just a good generic red egg for DP boosting.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, it is only realistically going to work on higher stage Digimon. So if you're expecting this to be an egg that just you could use right off the get-go, no. So those types of eggs I like to think of are eggs that support the higher levels, which in return is like, yeah, they're more specific for stack based decks that like to hide in raising. So it's not bad. But speaking of bad, we have Battle NPC. People were really high on this card, and then they slowly realized this is just not that great. So like it's weird because you're essentially paying 4 to play a level 3. It's a white memory setter, so like that's kind of nice. But like we don't really need this card because its on play effect allows us to tuck a level 3 underneath the Tamer and draw a card. So that's like, oh man, that's really good for save. Which it kind of is, but the fact that it doesn't really work with save outside of that is not that great. And then at the start of our main phase, this is where it's not actually that great for save. At the start of our main phase, if we don't have any Digimon on our field, we get to delete this Tamer and play a play cost 3 or less Tamer, or Digimon from underneath this Tamer. So, like, people were speculating this could work with Numemon, but Numemon's not a rookie that you could reasonably put underneath the Tamer. So therein lies the actual problem. It's basically pay 4 to play out a level 3 Digimon. Not good. Then we got the option. Oh, do you have anything else to say about that?
I mean, it's kind of like a generic scramble-ish card, but it's not as good as the scrambles, honestly. Because, I mean, yes, it's going to help set up your turn to be 3, and then, start in the main phase. Since I still don't have any Digimon on my field, I can pop in to get another body on the field. I'm pretty sure this would, you wouldn't be able, like, because if I remember correctly, you start a turn, you would gain the memory, and then the breeding phase happens, and then it's start a main phase, so.
Yeah, so you'd
Yeah.
start your turn with 3 memory, and then if you don't have a Digimon, just like a scramble, you could delete it to, like, it is basically just a bad scramble. Thinking about it now, yeah. That's probably a good comparison. It's just a bad scramble. And then we got Emperor Dragon of Calamity. This is just the delayed support option that we have been seeing a trend recently for Virus Imperial. So it just lets us play a free traded Digimon from our hand and reduce its play cost by 5. So that's how we're going to be obviously trying to get a level 4 or 5 out for cheap. Most of the time it's probably going to be a level 3 or ideally it's going to be the level 4. That's because 5 is such a weird number, but it's most likely going to be the level 4s that we want to play for free off of it. And then its delay ability is when the opponent's security is removed, which is not hard to do at all. We get to play a dragon mode from our fighter mode's Digivolution source for free. So not terrible, just not exciting. It doesn't let us reuse that dragon mode. Like, getting a free level 6 is not bad, but it requires us to be in a fighter mode to do so. And if we're in the fighter mode for that deck, most of the time we want to try to be winning that kind, like literally that turn. So unless we have like rush, I don't necessarily think it matters that much.
Yeah, especially with the fact that you're probably going to have to mix a bunch of the cards from EX3 Imperial Virus with this deck. I mean, because if I remember correctly, there is quite a bit of cards in there that want to delete the stack at the end of your turn after you do your big combo.
Yeah. Like, it wants to delete itself and then reset everything to do it all over again, which is honestly the strength of the deck. I've seen it in action, and the new Shadra, or not really new, the current
Shadramon.
Shadramon promo really helps enable that rebuild. Like, between the the BT16 Wormon and Shadramon, that's what really is the glue. Um, and then we have Digimon X, as you kind of already alluded to earlier. So if you want to cover that real quick, like
Yeah,
you could cover the whole Digimon stuff because there's a lot.
so with this new Seedramon, it's going to give you the ability of on play / when digivolving, so keep that in mind because a lot of the aquatic stuff likes to play out their own Digimon cards from the sources. But on play when digivolving, you could bounce the opponent's level 3 to the bottom of the deck, so it's not even to their hand. And if you so happen to have Seedramon or X anybody in this evolution source, one of your opponent's Tamers can't unsuspend till the end of the turn. Pretty darn good right there. And if you have 7 or fewer cards in hand, you could draw 1 card as an inheritable when you attack. Then we have Mega Seedramon X. This is the level 5. You could, on play when digivolving, again, you can return one of your opponent's level 4 or lowers to the bottom of the deck. Then if you have the Mega Seedramon or X anybody, one of your opponent's Digimons can't suspend till the end of their turn. Inheritable, your turn, this Digimon's attack target can't be changed. So that's already kind of looking good in itself right there. We have Giga Seedramon, so technically it's the X anybody form, but it's got a whole different name of besides just the X name. And this comes with a lot of effects. So it's got security tech +1, it's reboot and blocker, when digivolving and when attacking once per turn. For the Digievolution cards in this Digimon with Mega Digimon or X anybody in its evolution source, you can play one level 5 or lower Digimon card without paying the play cost. All turns, once per turn, when any of your Digimon are played from the Digivolution cards, you can de-digivolve to one of your opponent's Digimon. So this is pretty good in itself right there to help prevent you from getting aced as well.
Yeah, I mean, they all sound pretty good. Um, they obviously have lots of good usability, not only just for Aegis-Dramon and Deep Savers, but for like trying to build their own stuff. We just need a good like Metal Seedramon outside of Metal Seedramon Ace, and I think like we can start having some really interesting stuff that we could build and use with these cards. They're not bad. Um, we have Jessmon. Jessmon is pretty decent. Um, it actually plays out a token, so that's kind of cool. And the token has reboot, blocker, and decoy for red and black. So not bad. Just a little bit different than what we would have expected out of Jessmon, but it's another Jessmon. I think like the way the Jessmon deck's kind of built, we actually just want to start using Genkumon because Genkumon X from the set, the protections are kind of insane. Um,
Yeah, something I will say, because I know, I think we had some reveals earlier of the Jessmon line that had Alliance, and I kind of even mentioned that, I think the effects were like, oh, you could spend one of your Sistermons to Digivolve into Jessmon, and I was like saying and pointing out, like, if you have no other way to get another body on the field, then the Alliance Inheritable kind of doesn't seem worth it. The fact that this one plays out a token that has Reboot of all things, too, kind of now makes it worth it for the whole Alliance effect, because you could suspend the token and then unsuspend the token for the blocker.
Yeah, but the whole, like, in my perspective, what you want to do with Jessmon is play out the Sistermons, but maybe this is trying to take Jessmon into a less sister-focused variant, which I think actually would be pretty decent if the fact that everything wasn't still hinging on Sistermons. So,
Yeah.
like, I like the idea of like you could play the token or you could play the Sistermon when it comes to your Jessamon of choice, but I think the way the deck is built and all the support, just having the Sistermon is probably going to be better. It requires like I like this Jessamon a lot. Don't get me wrong. I think like for consistency wise, it does so much work because one, now you don't need the Sistermons, and two, it just plays out the token, so you could build something pretty interesting with it. It's just unfortunately everything else around the archetype is Sistermon related. Even the Genkumon is still kind of Sistermon related, where you could at least use it to help reduce the play cost. So it reduces the play cost by 4, making it a level 6 that you could play for 8. You're not going to do that. I'll just say that right now. You're most likely not going to do that unless like you're just going to find a way to end of turn DNA into Jesmon GX. But even then, you're still passing over probably more memory than you reasonably should or want to. The new Gekumon is Blocker and Reboot. Stereotypical because Jesmon's the sword and Gekumon's kind of like the shield. He's the defensive side. And then his ability allows you to Digivolve a level 6 or lower Huckmon into a Royal Knight from your hand or trash. So more trash usage and still not enough trash hate. Not a bad card, but I think we already have a better base Genkumon that we're most likely going to end up using, which I think is the starter deck one. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Jesmon deck actually fully forms and what people cook with it. But I think like honestly, the way because how cracked Geku X is and the BT10 Jesmon GX, we're just going to probably build into Genkumon because Genkumon can still play out Sistermons and do all that stuff. So yeah, then we got Oryu and Alphamon. So
Yeah,
you're the
so
more Alphamon expert.
yeah, so this is going to be interesting. So the Oryumon has piercing, and then it has an on play when digivolving. You can digivolve to one of your opponent's Digimon. Then during an attack, one of your Digimon in the breeding area may digivolve into a level 6 or lower Chronicle trait Digimon in your hand or trash without paying the cost. So that's kind of an interesting thing that it's doing there. It also has an all turns when a security card is removed from when security stacks are removed from delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the lowest DP. So this is all turns once per turn. So I mean, it doesn't matter whose security is getting removed, it's gonna get rid of something.
Yeah, although I do have to like note some of these cards read like absolutely garbage.
Yeah, because
Because
I was kind of
like
stuttering there for a second.
no, like so the way some of these effects read on some of these cards, it's like when security stacks are removed from comma do something. Like they sometimes just it's like they're not finishing the statement. It's weird. Like I get it. It's because they could just reword it to whenever a security card is removed, but it's specifically stating security stacks. It's weird, but that's probably just a rush translation thing in my perspective. Not to like harp on the translations because we haven't really had that many errors recently. But
Yeah.
yeah, uh,
And then has an inheritable of one attacking once per turn. If this Digimon is Alphamon or you can trash your opponent's top security. Not that bad necessarily. Then we have the more interesting thing, Alphamon. So this is both black and yellow. Has barrier, and then on play when digivolving, you can recover one. Then if during an attack, one of your Digimon, well, it kind of does the whole same thing of digivolving in your breeding area from your hand or trash. It has an all turns when the security stacks are removed from, comma, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 8,000 DP for the turn. And then inheritable all turns once per turn. If this Digimon will leave the battle area other than by your effects, if this Digimon is Alphamon or Ryukin, by trashing the top security card, it does not leave. So this Alphamon right here, now it depends. If you want to play the Chronicles trait and everything, that's fine and dandy, but even just using this Alphamon alone might be good to try to use with the whole BT9 Alphamon or you can stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is just a really good card for Alphamon in general. Like, a lot of these cards don't necessarily seem like that bad. The protection's always good. We do have to note it is only once per turn, so if they're able to out the body twice, then you're still kind of SOL. So there's that. And then the fact that it is just more Omni protection is kind of annoying, just because it's everywhere now. You get protection, you get protection, and you get protection, and now removal means nothing, which is why we're relying on like de-digivolving and like stun locking, alternative types of soft removal, because we just can't out these bodies anymore. Granted, this isn't inheritable, so you could always just snipe the inheritable if you're in blue. Which again is partially what's making blue mechanically super strong. But I'm digressing. I'm diverging too much. I think that's going to be the last spoiler we're going to be talking about. I know we have a butt ton, but kind of running low and tight on time. So so far, BT20 actually looks really good, and as a result, it's got me really hyped for 2.5 because that's where that's where BT20 is 2.5. So if you were to invest into Digimon right now, I would probably say hold off until 2.5 because that seems like that's going to be the set to get, obviously until BT21. And the cool thing about BT20 is that's going to be the set that actually catches us up. So as of 2.5, outside of some promos and whatnot, we should be pretty much caught up to Japan, which will be pretty cool. So that way, when BT21 comes out, that's going to be the first set that's going to release simultaneously worldwide. Technically 2.0 is, but I don't remember when Japan's getting 2.0. Or not 2.0, BT20 and 2.5 for us. Misspoke. But yeah, so there's just a lot of spoilers that we need to like just take a step back, look at the full evolution line. Once all the spoilers are revealed, I think the majority of them are. So next week,
I think so because they have officially revealed both the secret rares now at this point. So it's like once they've done that, it's like practically the set is done.
so well, sometimes they spoil the secrets early, but I think like this time they spoiled the secrets late. So pretty much spoilers are coming to a close. And there's just still a lot to digest with them because now we get to start figuring out with the evolution lines that are fully known or spoiled, how we can start incorporating and utilizing these cards. Because right now they're working on the schedule for next competitive season, which starts in April. Because remember, Worlds is in March, and usually around then is a ban and restriction update that'll shake up the meta, and I'm praying we get it before then, because the game could desperately use it, like desperately, at least in my perspective, and probably a lot of other people's. And it's like if Worlds is going to be BT20, honestly, having a banner restriction update come out before Worlds just makes more sense because right now we don't even have BT20 cards. Japan doesn't have BT20 cards. So as of the release of 2.0, while we get those cards and those players are trying to like prepare for that competitive environment, that would be the ideal time to introduce a first ban and restriction list, and then if they really wanted to, they could do another one, like when BT21 comes out or after Worlds, to have another one just to kind of see if what they did was meaningful enough at a higher competitive level. So they don't have to go like hog wild on one pre-Worlds, but one after Worlds probably should at least finish what they kind of started in trying to help fix the game if they were taking that approach. My perspective. But
yeah, because the other thing too is like, well, like kind of like what I mentioned last episode on the podcast was that JP players, they're gonna want to play the new cards more likely, but the American players, we're just gonna play whatever is good. I mean, take last year, the guy won Worlds playing SecCon because he truly believed SecCon was still really good, and he proved that it was. I mean, and JP players, they were not ready for SecCon because SecCon does not exist in JP whatsoever, not in their format.
Right, and like just the cultural difference between America and JP on how we approach the game is just fundamentally different because they want quick and snappy games. Let's get this done over with so we can move on. We had our fun here, and us filthy English players, we're just like, no, 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 we're best of three. These games supposedly are going to take an hour long, and we're going to get that hour's worth out of it. So like control decks don't exist as much in Japan because of that mentality. There are still control players, but that's why like Digimon, it feels like when it comes to their control decks, they've been trying to speed it up and actually introduce win cons. So like that's kind of where 7th grade Demon Lords is, where it's like, yeah, this is basically SecCon, but it's not really SecCon, but it is your premier control deck. That actually has a win con that does decide it can end games. So yeah, that's just my perspective on that. But hopefully we get a ban restriction update soon. I know a lot of people are basically saying like they came to the conclusion that most likely they're gonna have one after Worlds. I'm praying for before Worlds. So we'll see what Bandai decides to do. But yeah, EX08, just to kind of wrap things up and round things out. EX8, big flop of a set. Get your Gallantmons while you can. Everything else is going to be very cheap and easy to get. Outside of like a couple of outliers, but they're not even that expensive for outliers. And then BT20 is looking pretty good. Any other final thoughts, Jay Stewart?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, I'm definitely, like, I mean, I don't know when that Bandai live stream happened and everything, where they were announcing, like, what the themes of these other sets were and everything, but I'm definitely excited for BT 9 and 10 and or BT 22. Wait, did I say BT 9?
You said EX. Yeah, you said
Yeah.
BT. You meant EX 9 and 10.
Yeah, EX 9 and 10, and I'm definitely looking forward to BT 22, especially if they introduce like an Eaters deck. That would be so interesting just to do too.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff to look forward to. Let's see how they implement it, and let's see if the meta gets any healthier, because right now EX8 just doesn't matter. Sorry, EX8 believers. None of those decks actually matter, except for Gallantmon. Gallantmon's the only real deck. But that's just Protagonist, the card game, in a nutshell. A lot of people like to say Greymon Gaming, but we haven't had a Greymon in a while, so I'm just going to change that to Protagonist Gaming. Play Protagonist decks, and then, or invest in Protagonist decks, and they'll reward you, for the most part. So, with that, I want to thank everyone for listening and making it all the way to the end. It really does mean the world to us to know that you care enough to listen to two guys yap for about an hour. And if you enjoyed this episode and want to support the podcast, you already know what to do with all the social media doobly-doos. And with that, we hope to see you again next time.